If you want to know something about yourself, sit on your bed one night and say, what's one thing I'm doing wrong that I know I'm doing wrong, that I could fix, that I would fix? You meditate on that, you'll get an answer. And it won't be one you want, but it'll be the necessary one. When you're trapped, some of it's your own inadequacy. What you can do to begin with is every bloody thing you possibly can do to put yourself in the most virtuous and powerful negotiating position possible. Wherever I go in the world, people come up to me and they often have a pretty rough story to relate. It's an awful thing because you see, even in the revelation of their triumph, the initial depth of their despair. So I wouldn't change that. But it's not nothing. And it's certainly not just happiness. It's better than happiness, but it's almost unbearable.
So what's up, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy Joshua. This is the first video on the channel, probably by the time I'm going to be uploading this. All right, guys, so welcome to my channel. Welcome to the Unique 10 Men channel, where we come to talk about how the world works. In this channel, just know you're going to be expecting things like video essays, documentaries, reaction to a lot of videos, and things that affect our daily lives, basically. All right, so in this video I'm going to be reacting to an interview of Jordan Peterson in the Diary of a CEO podcast by Stephen Bartlett. The Diary of a CEO podcast by Stephen Bartlett. I'm going to drop a link to his channel below in the description. You guys can definitely go check out his channel. He has some amazing interviews with amazing people on his podcast and on his YouTube channel, the Diary of the CEO podcast. Okay, and in this video they talked about various things like the importance of being your true self, the importance of finding your purpose, the importance of self-awareness. They talked about the COVID-19 and a lot of controversies that were around it, and they also talked about remote working, the pros of remote working and the cons of remote working and remote schooling as well, and so many other things. So just to make sure that this video is not too long, I'm going to be doing it in like 11-minute segments. So this is like the part 1 section of my reaction. Then later I'm going to upload the part 2 section of the reaction to this video because it's over 1 hour long and I don't want it to be too long and boring. Okay, so let's just continue to the video, guys.
Quick one, can you do me a favor if you're listening to this and hit the subscribe button, the follow button, wherever you're listening to this podcast? Thank you so much. The conversation you guys have been waiting for. I say that because of the thousands and thousands of messages I've had since I announced that Jordan Peterson, the man himself, all the way from Canada, came here to sit in my kitchen and have a conversation with me. And what a conversation it was. One of the most moving moments in the history of this podcast takes place in this conversation. And I think the thing that people love about Jordan Peterson is his unrelenting desire to just say what he believes to be true, not what he believes to be correct, not what people want to hear, not what people will be happy to hear. And it's because of that, it's because of his pursuit of truth that he's managed to change millions and millions and millions of people's lives. That is absolutely no understatement. So without further ado, I'm Stephen Bartlett, and this is the Diary of a CEO. I hope nobody's listening, but if you are, then please keep this to yourself.
Whoa, come on, yeah.
Jordan, first, I feel like I owe you a debt of gratitude, and I want to say thank you for the impact you've had on my life, and I'll point at the specific impact you've had on my life. And you asked me before we started recording why this podcast had been successful. One of the reasons is actually something I've gained from reading and listening to your work, and that's this real commitment to trying to be your true self and trying to be your truth. This podcast wouldn't be successful, and I wouldn't have been successful in terms of pursuing myself had I not understood the importance of truth across all facets of life and in my relationships, which was a real pivotal thing for me. And that's thanks to your work.
So what's changed in your relationships as a consequence of that?
So I believe it's really difficult to truly connect with someone if you're not speaking and being your truth. And I wasn't. I think I was wearing a mask in my relationships in the context of I didn't express how I was thinking and feeling. I was trying to be who I thought my partner wanted me to be. And at the point when I let down the mask and I started speaking my truth, actually, as I was departing from the relationship got stronger than ever before. And it was like we were never actually connected until I was being true with her, with my feelings, with what I wanted, with my life. And since then, I would categorize my relationship as being the strongest thing I've ever seen in terms of a romantic connection with someone.
And so when you...
And you know, guys, this is something that happens with a lot of people in a lot of relationships, because sometimes just because we want to please somebody else with our partner, maybe our wife or girlfriend or something like that, and we end up putting up like a persona of what they might want to see in us or something that they would like to see in us, rather than us being our true self. And we do that for such a long time that it kind of feels very, very unfulfilling and uncomfortable with us, because we're like, this is not really who I am. I'm just trying to put up a picture that this partner of mine would like to see. But generally, deep down in our hearts, we know that that is not truly who we are. And it is something that we as humans must learn to balance. You must learn to balance being your true self as well as putting up a persona when the need arises. But let's get to what Jordan has to say.
We're starting to talk in your relationship in a more truthful manner. What did that mean that you had to admit? I mean, you just said that part of it was a disconnect between who you were trying to be and who you really were. So that's a persona issue, right? So you think maybe, and everyone has this proclivity to some degree, is they're deeply self-conscious and uncertain. And so instead of allowing the person they're with to connect with that underlying uncertainty and inadequacy, they act out a persona. Yeah. And then the problem is that, well, perhaps the person falls in love with that persona, but there's no real connection there. It's an artifice. And, having said that, one of the things that Carl Jung, the great psychotherapist, said about a persona is, don't be thinking that you're better off if you never formed one. So for Jung, it was a voyage from, say, undifferentiated self in infancy and so forth, through persona to authenticity. Because you have to act out your ideals to some degree, right? And you also have to formulate a avatar of yourself in some sense that's a mediator between you and other people in casual social encounters. Like, you don't want to walk into the bank and have the teller tell you about...
Jordan is so right there. There's a certain way you're going to have to act when you're in the public compared to when you're with someone you're very intimate with. So there needs to be a balance there, but let's hear what he has to say. Continue.
His or her day when you say, how are you doing? Right? I mean, now and then that can happen, but generally it's too much intimacy too quickly. And so you need this functional shell. But the problem arises when that functional shell is all that there is. And then the real person underneath is just desperate and unhappy because nothing of what's being acted out reflects a true underlying reality.
What is the consequence, the long-term consequence of acting? So many people, especially because of the world I live in Instagram and social media, we kind of build out these personas and then we almost follow the implicit instructions that come with those personas.
Well, that's the problem right there, is that, that I'm trying to get a hold of the Disney people at the moment because I want to do a lecture series on Pinocchio, because I think Pinocchio is a brilliant work of art. And if you're a puppet and an actor, and Pinocchio is both at times in that movie, both a puppet and an actor. So why an actor? Like, why is there something wrong with being an actor? Well, the first question is, well, who sets your role? And then the second question is, who's pulling your strings? So you've put on this front that is there to make you popular and sexy and desirable and to mask from yourself your own inadequacies. But that's a role. Well, who wrote it? And for what purpose? And so Jung said, for example, that we all acted out a myth, and whether we knew it or not. And, maybe you're acting out a tragedy. Maybe you're acting out narcissus. You don't know, because you've put that on yourself in an attempt in some ways to deliver to people what they want, or more accurately, to look as though you're delivering to people what they want. And it's not nothing to do that, right? Because at least you're attempting in some sense to adapt to the social world. Someone who's really infantile and dependent, someone who's never left home, part of their problem is that they haven't crafted a persona. So you don't want to denigrate it entirely, but it's no substitute for the real thing. And it turns out that not only is what we want from each other the real thing, but that's also the adventure of your life. And so if you aren't truthful, and that means, unfortunately, especially at the beginning, when you start to be truthful, it means deeply coming to terms with your inadequacies.
Did you guys just hear what he just said? Said being truthful means coming to terms with your inadequacies. You need to embrace the fact that you're not perfect. No man is perfect. No woman is perfect. You need to come to terms with that, because sometimes the kind of expectations that people have of us is that they expect us to be perfect. They expect us to do things this way, do things that without any error or mistakes. But the truth is, we are not perfect beings. We are not perfect beings. You need to embrace the fact that we are people that have inadequacies, we have shortfalls, and we need to embrace that fact. We are always, learning and evolving as humans to develop our values, our character, our morals, so that we can become better people in the society. But it doesn't mean that we are perfect. And people outside of ourselves need to recognize that, and we also need to recognize that ourselves. Let's continue.
Humility. So it's very painful. Without that, you don't have the adventure of your life. You have the role that you've acquiesced to. And that'll take all the meaning out of your life.
The adventure of your life. You say, imagine who you could be, and then aim single-mindedly at that. Mm-hmm. I encounter these young people who appear to know who they could be, or they've imagined who they could be, but for whatever reason, they seem to choose the certain misery of their current situation, the job that's sucking their soul out, or that relationship, over the uncertainty they'll encounter as they go on the adventure of their life. So what would I say to these young people who always say to me, Steve, I want to do this, but you can see them stifled by fear, because it's like...
Yeah, well, it's like, make a plan, man. So when I was doing my clinical work, which...
This shows you the importance of planning, guys. If you want to do something spectacular, if you want to do something extraordinary, you need to make a plan. You need to make a plan. People that plan and follow through with their plan always end up succeeding. Like, for example, because I'm a Christian, and I always stand up by what the Bible says, what the scripture says. And there was something I really came across this morning while I was studying my Bible. And this, let me just quickly check it out. Good planning and hard work leads to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts leads to poverty. So if you're facing something that you're not comfortable with, maybe you have a bad job, your boss in the office is not treating you the way they're supposed to treat you, you need to create a plan and follow through with that plan, and try to understand why these people are acting the way they're acting, why you're getting the result you're not expecting, and try to take a step backward to analyze the whole situation from an objective perspective and see how you can resolve the whole problem. But let's continue.
I did a lot of career work with my clients, both at a beginner level, I would say, like really a beginner level, with people who had no employment whatsoever, no history of employment, who were undereducated and who lacked every skill you could possibly imagine. So these are people who were really in dire straits, up to people who were operating at the top of their profession, but who could still strategize forward. And so, for example, let's say you're at a dead end in your job. Okay, so I don't find my work meaningful. All right, so that's a problem statement. It's like, well, why not? I find the work I do repetitive and boring and without spirit. I have a bad relationship or a neutral relationship with my boss who doesn't know who I am. I have problems with coworkers. All of that needs to be differentiated, right, and analyzed in detail. So we might say, for example, let's say you believe that you're undervalued at work, and maybe you are. What you need to do is you have something to say, and we would have to figure out what it is that you have to say. But it would be some variant of, I'm bringing more value to the table than I'm being compensated for. And that's demoralizing me. And it's also not good for you being my boss, because if I'm actually more valuable than is being recognized, then the fact that you're not valuing me properly means that I will become demoralized. I won't work properly, and you won't get the best out of me. So it's bad for both of us. And if your boss is in principle not amenable to such a discussion, then what you should seriously consider doing is finding another job.
So guys, can you see what he just said? He said if you're facing this kind of situation, maybe in a job you don't like, try to understand why you don't like the job. Take a step backward. Take a step backwards and try to understand why people, your boss or the organization is not giving you the compensation you deserve. If you know you're working your ass off and you're being valuable to the organization, and really just have a conversation with your boss, your superiors, maybe the HR or whoever is your superior, and just see what their response is going to be. And if you feel like they do not still want to compensate you for the kind of effort you're bringing to the organization that is truly valuable, then the next thing is just to create a plan on how you could leave the organization to a better organization, because at the end of the day, it's your life to live, not theirs. Do you understand what I'm saying? So guys, I've come to the end of the part 1 of this reaction video of the interview. Just like I said in the beginning of the video, I do not want it to be long, and uploading on YouTube takes a lot of time when the file size is a lot, guys. So but if you've gotten a little bit of value from this part 1 of the video, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you can get notified when I upload more interesting content like this. But until then, see you guys in the next part. God bless.